is the fruit of labor of a lot of folks. And I want to thank all the volunteers who have worked towards it. I want to also thank all the attendees who are coming from almost 25 different countries who have registered for this convention today. As I said, while we wanted to be in person, this virtual nature of this is such that it allows all of us to participate from any part of the world. And I'm glad that we have participants and speakers from 3 different continents today. And this theme of this convention overall is Sustainable Technology Innovations, STI 2022. Please be social. Our social handles are up there. And please be known to everyone that this is being recorded and it will be shared. So those who miss it, they will be able to see recording of it. The theme of this convention, STI 2022, reflects ASEI's vision and commitment to support United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And the technological innovations and advancements that address some of the largest challenges the world is facing today, which is global warming and the uncertainty in the energy demand scenario, which actually threatens the entire species. So we as engineers are incented to design systems which are efficient, and we should use green and renewable energies. And we'll talk more about it in tomorrow's sessions. But more importantly, let's talk about what is on hand today. What we have is the Aerospace Symposium and the wonderful speakers that we have from all over US today. And some of you have known about ASEI, but for those who are new, let me share a presentation very quickly. So what happened in 1983? Anyone takes a guess? I'll give you a hint.
World
For
Cup.
all the cricket fans out there, you know, 1983 was a year when India won the Cricket World Cup for the first time. But there's another thing that happened in 1983, which was that ASEI was born, where a bunch of enthusiastic folks got together and formed a chapter in Michigan. And since then, almost 40 years later, here we are with the same vision, with the same purpose, and the mission to actually give back to the society. And our essential mission has not changed, but the desire to help the next generation of engineers and scientists remains very strong in our hearts. We have been providing opportunities for professionals, students, and businesses, and career guidance and mentoring to students and members. Throughout 2020 and 2021, that we were stuck at home, we made the best use of this crisis, and we made our programs not only virtual, but free to all. And thanks to the volunteers, thanks to the board, and thanks to some sponsors, we are able to continue to serve our student community and serve our membership. The initiatives that we launched and redoubled our efforts in were Mentor Connect, where we got together a small group of dedicated mentors and mentees, and we had a great interaction in this structured program. The first cohort of that finished last year. The next cohort will start in a few months from now. It's a 6-month program. And then an ongoing relationship is established with universities and student bodies, faculty bodies, and industry organizations under University Connect. We continued our Getting Real with Engineering webinar series and also launched the Engineering Tales series, where many of the accomplished individuals in our community were brought forward to share their stories. Youth technology and STEM has been the hallmark of our existence as well. Through regional science fairs and competitions, we bring forward budding minds and scientists who then get to win prizes by participating in an event, something of that sort, which we'll see in the afternoon today. And they win awards and scholarships. And all of that is made possible by the generous donation of time from volunteers, mentors, and our sponsors. Talking of sponsors, I want to thank sponsors here today. Boeing is a gold sponsor, and so is Juniper Networks. And we thank both of them for their generosity, and ICICI Bank as well. So what is in store for the next 2 days? Today, as I said, is the Aerospace Symposium and the Youth Technology Exposition, where the students will be awarded. And then tomorrow, the CXO Summit, where we have leadership talks, where we will have the CIOs and the CEOs, and a great discussion on sustainability and innovation amongst subject matter experts from 3 different continents, Singapore, UK, and India and US. All those experts are going to come together and talk about it. More on that. 9 months ago, if you had told me that we would be able to pull together such an eminent panel of speakers, I wouldn't have believed. But I continued the discussions with Dr. Shreekant Agrawal. And let me now pass the baton to Dr. Agrawal. In a moment, I want to introduce him a little bit more. Dr. Shreekant Agrawal is an expert in aerospace, having been in this industry for over 39 years. And he is the head of flight technologies at Supernal, which is the urban air mobility division of Hyundai Motor Group. And previously, he was the flight sciences director at Northrop Grumman. And before that, he had spent a number of years as a technical fellow at Boeing, one of our sponsors as well today. And he has led various efforts in the aerospace industries after earning his PhD from Michigan University and MS from University of Maryland. And of course, he is a proud IIT alum as well. So please welcome Dr. Shreekant Agrawal. One more thing before I go. I stand on the shoulders of all the great work that Dr. Shreekant Agrawal and his team had put together back in 2006 to 2011, when he was very actively involved with ASEI. He was the national president as well, and he led the SoCal chapter, as well as put together a wonderful conference in LA in 2006. So with that, I welcome you all again. Enjoy the convention and enjoy this special symposium put together by Dr. Shreekant Agrawal and team. Over to you, Dr. Agrawal.
Thank you, Piyush, for a very generous introduction. Good morning to all of you and those who are in other parts of the world. Good evening or good late night, I guess, for some of you. I guess we have people watching not just in US, but also in India and South Korea and many other parts of the world, like earlier we heard 25 different countries around the world. So maybe you can bring up the PDF version of the flyer on the screen very briefly. You've all seen this. Hopefully it has been mailed to all the registrants. We have certainly put together a very exciting program for you. But before that, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to this Aerospace Symposium for Everyone, which is part of the 34th ASEI National Convention. The Symposium Committee has really put together an exciting program, like I said, and this is indeed one-of-a-kind gathering of aerospace scientists, engineers, and technologists, as well as prominent leaders from NASA, industry, and academia who are literally pushing the limits of the universe. And you'll see some of that examples, I guess, in the next 4 or 5 hours. I also want to emphasize that this symposium is for everyone, like the title says, Aerospace Symposium for Everyone. In other words, for general public. You do not have to be a rocket scientist or an aerospace engineer to understand what the speakers are going to talk about today. Let me provide a few general information for you, and then we'll get going. So you saw from Piyush's earlier presentation, ASEI hosts many events throughout the year. You can go to the website www.aseiusa.org and learn more about those events. Second, we have about 450 people who have registered for this convention as of last night. Many of them are young engineers and scientists, and many are yet to decide whether they should go in aerospace or STEM in general. I would request the speakers to say a few words regarding the opportunities that are abound for those budding young engineers. Also, many registrants are highly skilled and practicing professionals in various corporations, universities, and government organizations. Of course, they too would love to know more about this field so that they can reach greater heights in their career. We also have many entrepreneurs among the audience today who would love to learn the opportunities that these topics could bring to them. Historically, the development of space programs has been slow and progress incremental. But in the last 18 months, we have witnessed unprecedented advancements by leaps and bounds from several aerospace companies reaching new frontiers. With the recent events, space access and tourism have captured and piqued our imagination. Soon, flying air taxis for urban air mobility and high-speed air travel, including supersonic and possibly hypersonic commercial travel, can enhance our living standards. Several ASEI members are eminent aerospace engineers who are directly involved in the recent advancements. ASEI has assembled a panel of experts in the field to host this virtual symposium for you and discuss the current euphoria on these 4 topics: high-speed air travel, urban air, living on the moon, space access and tourism, and flying air taxis. So although these topics may appear futuristic when you think about those, is this really going to happen? Are we really going to have high-speed air travel, supersonic air travel? Are we really going to fly in the air? Are we really going to have these flying taxis that we're talking about? Yes, they're not really too far. They are poised to become real in not too distant a future and positively impact the quality of our lives. So before we get started, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to all the moderators, speakers, and the audience for participating in this event. Many of them are, of course, also watching from other parts of the world. I'd like to thank all the symposium committee members, without whom this event would not have been possible. Here are the committee members on the screen. Finally, I'd like to recognize our event sponsors. Thanks to Boeing and Juniper Networks for being gold sponsors, and ICICI Bank as a bronze sponsor. We'll be playing their videos during the break and in between the various panel sessions. So perhaps you can bring the agenda on the screen. Like I said before, we have an exciting program for you. The agenda for the symposium is, we'll have a keynote speech coming up in a few minutes, 4 panel sessions: high-speed air travel, living on the moon, space access and tourism, and flying air taxis, in that order, starting soon. We're probably running a few minutes, but we'll catch up, hopefully, as we go. Each panel lasting for about an hour. I would like to request everyone to please post your questions in the Zoom Q&A. And if there are comments, put them in the chat session. We'll try to address as many of your questions and comments as possible in the time we have allocated for each session. Our plan is to record the entire event in order to make it available to those who could not be present today. We'll also make all these presentation slides available for everyone. However, if you have already told us to not post it on the ASEI website, we will of course honor that. At this time, I would like to invite my good friend for the past 40+ years, Dr. Ajay Kothari, my co-chair for this symposium, to introduce our keynote speaker. But before that, a few words about Ajay too. Dr. Ajay Kothari is president and founder of Astrox Corporation, an aerospace R&D company located in suburban Washington, D.C. His master's and PhD in aerospace engineering are from University of Maryland. Dr. Kothari did his PhD along with Dr. Michael Griffin under the same advisor at the same time at the University of Maryland, and they have been friends with each other for almost 45 years. So there is no better person than Dr. Ajay Kothari to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Michael Griffin. Ajay.
Oh, thank you very much, Shreekant. And I thank ASEI for giving me this opportunity to introduce my good friend, Mike, for a long, my good friend for a long time. Dr. Michael Griffin actually served as 11th administrator of NASA from 2005 to 2008, and more recently, also as Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering at Pentagon, where he was responsible for all US Defense Department research and development programs. Now, Dr. Griffin is also co-founded and is co-president of Logic, a business consulting practice in aerospace, in defense, and national security. Over his career, he has received so many awards, too many for me to be able to list here and name here. But one interesting factoid, this is very interesting. In recognition of his contribution to the Pluto New Horizon mission, asteroid 15999 was named Michael Griffin in his honor. That's quite an honor, I must say. Mike has 5 master's degrees, count them 5. And you know, as Indian Americans, we who value education so much, we absolutely recognize the importance, or at least the value, of something like this. And also as a PhD in aerospace engineering from University of Maryland, where we did our PhD together. So we have known each other, like as Shreekant said, for almost 45 years. So, you know, so in some classes, actually, this is interesting, that there were just 4 people in a class at that time in this, you know, this is in the 70s. Not too many people in the aerospace field, but there were just 4 people in classes, Mike and 3 Indian American students, which is Dr. Partha, Dr. Divakar, and myself, just 4 of us, all under the same advisor, as Shreekant mentioned, the famed Professor John Anderson. So we all became quite close, and we are still close. He would actually come to our apartment many times, at least sometimes, many times, and eat Indian food, mostly South Indian actually, which he loved and tolerated, sometimes better than us, at least better than me, you know. Little did we know at that time then that one day he would become the head of NASA, and we were giving him rice in a plate. So it was really, but as NASA administrator from 2005 and to 2008, he went to India 3 times and worked on collaboration between NASA and ISRO. And actually, another tidbit, he was responsible for putting M3 instrument, which is the moon mineralogy mapper, as you all know, on Chandrayaan-1, which detected water on the South Pole. So that's it was a revolutionary discovery at the time. And for this, we also thank Mike, you know. And lastly, one time I did a party for him at my house when he was actually NASA administrator, and asked him for a convenient date. And he said he would quit anything and come to the party to meet us friends. That is love, and that is affection, still strong. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, and over to you.
Well, thanks, Ajay. That's a better introduction than I deserve, to be honest with you. I feel that I've been extraordinarily lucky in my career and extraordinarily lucky with my friendships. So when you Apparently, our ability to do arithmetic fades as we get older, because when you say we've been friends for almost 45 years, so we met in 1974, which would be 48 years ago by my accounting, unless I have messed something up.
No, I think you're right.
So we are going on 50 years, and it is very pleasant to remember those days as a young
ages us
student.
so, yeah.
Yes, we are now all of us are old, and I see other friends are scheduled to speak, or maybe even online. Kevin Bocut, who later was a student of mine, took classes from me. Bhavya Lal, I see as a long and close friend of my business partner, Dr. Lisa Porter, who is my partner in our consultancy, and Bhavya is a friend, and she's now what I think the chief of staff at NASA or some similar position.
Associate administrator.
Yeah, associate administrator for policy, I think, whatever.
Yeah.
I have come to have many friends in the Indian American community, and my life has been richer for that. But to go back to the beginning, yes, when we were beginning our graduate studies under John Anderson at University of Maryland, it was a time when the Apollo program had ended, and America was frankly retreating from space exploration. The Vietnam War was winding down, so defense investments in aerospace were shrinking. And there were, as you said, Ajay, going back almost 50 years now, there was a real valley in aerospace engineering education, and frankly, engineering education across the board in America. And so it was not uncommon. I've talked about these experiences with many others. It was not uncommon in those years to find that half of our classes were populated with people, even if they became Americans later, were not native born. They were from other countries around the world. Frankly, America was so fortunate to have that, because just like during the World War II years, when victory and the development of nuclear weapons to end the war in the Pacific were largely facilitated by people who came to this country seeking refuge from other countries or seeking opportunities, we enjoyed such a time again in the post-Apollo period, certainly in aerospace engineering education. So for the first time in my life, I got to meet and work every day and live every day with people who came from other places. It opened my eyes in a way that would not have been done merely reading about historical events. I learned, as we say, up close and personal, that people who have been born and raised and educated in other areas of the world are just as smart, just as capable, or smarter and more capable than people who are born here. I learned that an American passport is not an automatic grant of superiority, that you have to, that if you want to be better, you have to work at that every day. I will tell you honestly that I developed an enormous amount of respect for people who were willing to uproot their lives and come to a new country and a new culture, and not only learn to survive in a new country and a new culture, but to thrive and prosper and excel, as so many people on this call have. many years later, when my own mother died, my brother and sister and I found a record in her papers that I think she was ashamed of because she never showed it to us. But her own grandfather had come to the United States as an indentured servant in the late 1800s. They still had indentured servants in the late 1800s, and I have his papers and I have his pay book. And I thought to myself at the time that in my entire life, I've never done anything so bold and so courageous as to come to a new country as an indentured servant. And similarly for so many of the people on this call who came from India and started a new life elsewhere. And as I said, not only survived, but prospered and excelled. I have an enormous degree of respect for that, and frankly, an enormous degree of gratitude, because for those of us who are native born, it has been nothing but helpful to a country whose highest principles are things to be admired. I have often said, given these earlier experiences, I've often said that the single best thing about America at its best is that it is not an ethnic group, but it is a club. And the club has rules, and the club has values, and the club has principles, and the club has goals. And if you want to share in those values and principles and goals, you can join the club. But it is not an ethnic group, and I hope it never becomes one. On the personal side, I remember, of course, studying together for our comprehensive exams and grilling and examining each other and using the blackboard. And we had blackboards in those days with actual chalk and erasers to pose problems for each other that might appear on our comprehensive exams. And I remember bemoaning to each other the difficulty of some homework assignment or other, the frustration with certain professors, and the enjoyment of others. Those professors who were willing to extend themselves to help us understand the points they were making, and on the other side, those who treated it as an exercise in hazing of the students to make sure they were as miserable as possible. Those are the things we all go through together. I do remember being exposed to Indian food, and of course, I like it. And many of my friends have observed that I am on a seafood diet. If I see food, I eat it. And Indian food was no exception. I remember that several of my Indian friends had not had the opportunity to learn to drive and obtain driver's licenses here in the United States. And I, during lunch hours, taught several of them to drive, and not only to drive, but to drive a stick shift car, which was what I had. So to this day, I've never owned an automatic transmission car. So if you take driving lessons from me, you learn how to drive a real car. So yes, I nurtured several of my Indian friends through getting a driver's license here in the States. And similarly, they showed me what an incredible education one gets in engineering schools in India. So I'll close by saying that when I had opportunities as NASA administrator to visit in India, in a certain way, I felt at home. I will never forget the experience I had. One of the best experiences I had as administrator of NASA was to visit the various Indian space centers And when I would visit those centers, unlike any other visits I had as a high-ranking government official, the Indian staff members at those institutes would ask for an hour or so of time, and then they would quiz me as engineers to another engineer about what we were doing in spaceflight and why we were doing it one way as opposed to another, or had we considered this or had we considered that. They were engineers treating me as an engineer, which is all I ever was. And it was among the most pleasant experiences I had in my time as NASA administrator. And I realized that the Indian Space Research Organization and the engineers who staffed those institutes were head and shoulders equal to the best in the world. And it was a very, very nice experience. So yes, you mentioned Partha, Karangulam Parthasarathi and Diwakar, and I won't forget Prasad Sampath and Hebar and others with whom we went to school. Those were very good times. This is one of the few keynote addresses I've given which wasn't focused on technology or policy or both. So I hope my friend Bhavya will forgive me if she views this for sharing more personal experiences rather than talking about space policy, which is what she and I usually talk about. Thanks for inviting me to do this, and I wish all of you the very best conference. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Griffin. Ajay had told us how well connected you were with the Indian Americans, the Indian engineers, the scientists in this country. And now we see it firsthand, we hear it firsthand. So really, really thank you so much for coming and addressing to this audience, to us in the ASEI community.
Well,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. I'm still working today with Indian American engineers. One of my favorite clients in our current consulting practice is an Indian American engineer. They're everywhere to our benefit.
Yeah.